And we're live. Welcome back to the Loopcast. Today, I don't have the same intro to say. We are joined by a new guest, Logan Church. She is from the political team here at CatholicVote. Before I give a full introduction, yes, indeed, Erika did have her baby. Mom and baby are doing great. It happened actually on the Friday live that we did. So glad it went well. Thank you for all the prayers for everyone thinking of Erika here. And now we enter into what I'm referring to as the Erika Maternity Leave Tour. It is impossible to replace Erika, but we are going to be bringing on some different personalities from CatholicVote that you could see behind the curtain a little bit and get to hang out with us on these live shows. So today we have Logan Church. I'm excited to bring on Logan. Welcome to the show. Glad you're here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm so excited to get to have a piece of the Loopcast action.
Yeah, people said that they thought Erika was Gen Z. You are actually Gen Z. So we are bringing a little bit of the youth heat on Josh here. You're going to be the resident old man, and we're going to bring the fire from that element. So, okay, so getting right into it. I didn't know where I was going with that one, to be completely honest. We're going to get right into it.
I get it. I'm older than both of you combined. Whatever. Something like that. I get it.
Don't want to remind you that too much. Happy Monday to everyone hanging out here in the chat. I'm sure some more people are going to be coming in. So we had some action happen over the weekend. And what I'm referring to as opposites. Okay, so there was apologies issued over the weekend. The current president issued an apology, and the former president issued an apology. Would you like to fill in the blanks on what those apologies were, Josh?
Well, yeah. I mean, so obviously there's the State of the Union address, and Marjorie Taylor Greene shouted, say your name, and so President Biden does during the State of the Union. He says. But he called her Lacand Riley, which is actually the football coach at USC. But anyway, and he said, yes, murdered by an illegal. So over the weekend, MSNBC interviews him and says, now, wait a minute. Some people were upset by what you said, referring to that whole incident. And President Biden apologized for using the term illegal. And it just kind of blows my mind because I thought at first it was intentional because on the left, it's absolutely forbidden to use the term illegal. No one's illegal, even those who commit crimes, I guess, who enter the country illegally. And I thought Biden was actually playing it smart here and clever by trying to come off in this election year as the so-called moderate. Oh, I might make the left upset, but I'm going to tell it like it is. And this guy was an illegal. So that's what I thought he was doing when I listened to him on the State of the Union. But no, that was a mistake. And he told MSNBC that he was sorry and he apologized to this person who murdered an American citizen. He apologized to him for referring to him as an illegal. Why this guy thinks someone who murders somebody deserves this dignity is beyond me. But so what former President Donald Trump did, he went down to Georgia, held a rally, met backstage with the parents of Lacand Riley, and apologized to them for the policies that led to the murder of their daughter. Of course, it's not his fault, but, he was just trying to say that he empathized for them. And it was a tough situation, but I really am surprised that Joe Biden apologized for this using the term illegal. I think that's politically foolish, and I think it's going to spawn 1,000, 10,000 TV ads.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned foolish because I looked at some of the responses to this and I did see people online being like, thank you, Biden, for admitting that you were wrong. Not wrong for who he apologized to, but wrong for using the term illegal. Like there's still people that are like, wow, he can really grow and learn from his mistakes. But I think the political analysis is a lot more interesting. I really see Lacand Riley as kind of a martyr situation. It feels like for this upcoming election. How powerful actually, I mean, Logan, you're on the ground a lot. I mean, you're the political director here. How powerful is the immigration message, is the Lacand Riley message actually tangibly on the ground?
I mean, people are raging over Lacand Riley. And I think a big thing that I'm hearing a lot from female voters, especially, she did everything right. She was running in daytime. She told her roommate where she was going, when she was going to be back. Her roommates called in an appropriate amount of time, and she still died. And the answer that we're getting as women is, oh, well, she shouldn't have been running by herself. There's like a hierarchy of importance when it comes to the left, and this hierarchy is women are important until they're up against an illegal immigrant or a trans member of the community. And so I think that women are getting fed this message that we're just never good enough and it's always our fault. You can run and tell your friends where you're running and when you're running, and if you die, that's your fault. Sorry, you shouldn't have been running. Oh, and he was an illegal. People are concerned about illegal immigration, whether they're in Ohio, Virginia, or Texas. And I think the more they're getting laughed at by the left, the more upset they're going to be about it. And I think this is a good example of that stark difference between the two sides.
Well, and I think it gets to this question of ideology. Okay. So I think the American people, the moderates or independents or what have you, the kind of 20% that are in the middle that decide the elections either way. And they tend to want to put a check on too much power, and they tend to be discouraging of people who are ideological. And so, like in 2012, they thought Romney and Paul Ryan, they were a little bit too ideological when it came to the budget, and they wanted to cut Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security and that kind of stuff. And they said that just doesn't sound right, and they got rejected. But I think the American people kind of put a stop on if they think one side is too ideological. Now, sometimes, obviously, I think they make the mistake and they say no to the wrong people. But I do think Joe Biden, if he's going to stick with this and apologize for calling this murderer an illegal, I think it comes off as the progressivist, ideological box that he's put himself in, where he tried to position himself in 2020 as this, old, Grandpa Joe who's just kind of moderate. I'm going to make sure I take care of things. This Trump guy is a little too crazy, screams too much, tweets too much. He's a little too hot-headed. Can't trust him with the nuclear bombs. I'm the old hired hand. I'll get things back to normal. But then you go out and say this, and you apologize for calling a murderer an illegal alien. Like that to me, I think the American people are going to reject that. And I do think that it does make it that much harder for Biden to be able to mount a re-election campaign here. So I think he's going to suffer. I think North Carolina and Georgia, the voters there are just going to say, no way.
Well, that wasn't even
just too far.
That wasn't even the craziest part of the interview, because then he followed it up by saying that illegal immigrants built this country in the same interview.
Which is just it drives me crazy. It's like, people built, like all the different ethnicities of people that had a part of our story that came into the country. I mean, first of all, my family came in, it was still the colony. So, maybe not really immigrants, but anyway, I'm just gonna throw that out. But all the different people that came in from Germany, Eastern Europe, we had people from China, all over, on the West Coast. We had all these different people come from all these different places, but the vast majority of the people that came to this country through immigration went through Ellis Island. That was going through the process legally. And so this idea that illegals built this country, no, illegals are coming into this country and allowing us to have groceries for below market rates, and we're paying them inhumane wages and treating them terribly. But the left thinks that's perfectly fine as long as they get all their fancy food at a cheap price.
Yeah. Who's going to clean your toilets? Donald Trump.
I can't afford strawberries if we actually pay people a human wage.
Right. Exactly.
I can't believe they say this. I mean, they say they're for the little guy.
Yeah, we were up late. We were up late watching and tweeting. Josh was doing a lot of tweeting during the State of the Union. But Logan, you were watching as well. And it seemed like one man was yelling, and it wasn't Donald Trump. It seemed like they got his cocktail of drugs right. He really was high energy, I have to say. And I was watching it basically waiting for, and of course there's the slurring of words, there's the Lacand Riley, but it seemed like he was fired up and on point. I mean, the Democrats love cheering whenever you can get a sentence together. But what were your initial thoughts on the State of the Union in general, the feel of it, the talking points, everything? Do you think it was effective? I guess we'll start there.
So I would say this. If it were a campaign speech, I would say it would have been one of the best rally speeches Joe Biden has ever given if it were at a rally. But this was not a rally. This was the State of the Union. The State of the Union is supposed to be a unifying speech, an opportunity to rah, this is what I've done, even if, you're stretching the truth a little bit. He was yelling. He was angry. Like you said, he was riled up. And the truth is, if he was speaking to a room full of his supporters on the campaign trail, that would have been an acceptable speech to give, maybe even arguably a decent speech. But his entire speech was, hey, I know I'm bad, but Trump's worse. Don't forget all the things that Trump did. And that was, you could summarize the whole speech in, I'm bad, but Trump's worse. There was very little, there was no ownership for anything. Everything that we consider, and when I say we, I mean the 70% of American people who feel like life is worse now than it was under President Trump, everything that we consider an issue, he's saying, well, that's just the Republicans' fault. If they would do X, Y, Z, if they would give amnesty to the illegal immigrants that are here right now, then, the border would be solved because there'd be no more illegal immigrants. Duh. I mean, that was kind of the speech. And not to mention, when the president brings guests, that's usually a sign of what he wants to point to in his administration and the things that they've done. Well, he brought forth people like Katie Cox, who he honored as a hero. And Katie Cox, in my book, is a murderer. Katie Cox, for those of you who don't know, is the woman who, at the end of her pregnancy, found out that her baby had,
trisomy
18.
Yeah,
which Rick Santorum's daughter has, and she's lived to the age of 16 years old and is still living a very full life, decided that, let's be honest, she didn't want to deal with that. And so she wanted an abortion. She was not able to get an abortion in the state of Texas. So she had to leave the state of Texas to abort her child, to murder her fully formed baby. And so those are the people that Joe Biden chose to honor at the State of the Union. And I think your independent voters, your swing voters, that's not what they want to see. They, like Josh was saying earlier, they don't want to see a side of extremes. And the Democrats want to pretend that, we're the extremists for being pro-life. But at the same time, here they are honoring somebody who murdered their baby fully formed at 9 months. I mean, It was insane.
I do think that Biden runs into trouble. I mean, I think the American people are a little bit less pro-life than we would want, certainly. We would want it to be a strong majority of Americans that are pro-life. It's kind of a mixed bag, but I don't think the American people love this kind of a celebration abortion, as you were describing what Biden was doing. And I think that's where Biden runs into hopefully we'll run into some problems. But it's just worth noting, we have the second Catholic president of the United States champion abortion from a national stage. In a speech to the country, he is calling for abortion, and not just like safe, legal, and rare, or like Bill Clinton did. He is celebrating it. He is shouting it from the rooftops. And you think to yourselves, what would a person have to do to get excommunicated? Maybe if Joe Biden forgot to recycle, and it just kind of drives you crazy. What is it going to take? And so a lot of Catholics, they email us and they talk to us and they say, what is going on? Why won't more priests and bishops speak out about this? I don't know the answer to that, but I'll tell you this. We at Catholic Vote are dedicated to removing him from office in any way we can. We may not be able to excommunicate him, but we sure as heck can fire him. And he deserves to be booted out of office. This is an absolute disgrace that a Catholic man would call for abortion without any sense. I mean, it's not even like he's pretending like it's panging at his conscience at all. He is celebrating it, and it's an absolute scandal.
Yeah. I mean, I would say on that note, you're talking about, polling is very clear. Your average American does not agree with abortion up until 9 months. 80% of Americans disagree with that. Yet the first guest that he announced at the State of the Union is Katie Cox. They're not even hiding it anymore. I mean, it's almost like, could you be that ignorant to what the American people want? Like, you're right. There are quite a few Americans that believe in access to, safe, rare abortion, if that's even a thing anymore. But they don't want babies put into cardiac arrest and then dismembered and removed from the womb. That's not what the average American wants. Yet here we are celebrating it, treating her like she's a hero.
So, Logan, you clearly have got Josh in politics mode. It sounds like you're both stomping really hard, really well, I have to say. But you're dealing with me, and I'm not that way. I got to say my favorite part was the Biden reaction to seeing Marjorie Taylor Greene in the Trump gear. I mean, was that not the funniest? I have to say, for all of Biden's gaffes, the reaction on his face there, seeing Marjorie Taylor Greene, and like just a hint of shame on Marjorie Taylor Greene's face for being decked out in the gear was pretty funny.
She doesn't have shame. That wasn't what you were.
It's kind of her,
not at this point.
kind of her talent, kind of the talent of a lot of politicians. But yeah, that big moment of the night really stuck out to me was like the throwing of the pin. This is just kind of hilarious, but like we're throwing pins at people to try to get him to say a name. And that was like the first time it felt like to me, Biden really went off script. Like there was clearly a script he was following. He was raging on the talking points. And then that kind of took him aback. Obviously he drops the illegal comment, which was like very not in the playbook. I could just see behind him, if you go back, Kamala Harris's face just being like, "Ooh, like I cannot believe you just said that." Of course, mispronouncing the name as well. It does seem like we got to the end of that speech. It felt like very much a win for like the Biden reelection camp. But I guess the question now is he's going to have to go on a very long, arduous, taxing campaign trail here. So this is kind of his kickoff of what's to be his, re-enthronement to become president, to beat Donald Trump, to fulfill the prophecy, yada, yada, yada. From this rhetoric, for the politics people in the room here, do you see his tone changing now after delivering this quote unquote unifying speech that didn't feel very much this way? What do you think he's going to run on going forward to slay the beast that is Donald Trump for the Democrats?
Well, he's going to try to ignore the immigration problem. He's going to emphasize abortion at every turn, and he's probably going to campaign more. Like whatever he did, and that's the whole internet conspiracy that the physicians hopped him up with a bunch of uppers or something like that to make him scream and yell and have stamina for an hour.
People were saying Adderall. People were saying Adderall has like that angry effects.
Past his bedtime normally there. Right. But the thing is, the expectations were so low for him, and the poll numbers were really bad amongst independents with regards to Biden because people think he's too old. So he succeeded for himself in his own estimation with this speech, and the fact that there was no, yes, he said Lincoln Riley instead of Lacand Riley, but most people are probably not going to sweat over that. The bigger thing is that he spoke for an hour, and he didn't look like he needed to be hit alongside the head, like he stuttered. He didn't have like a McConnell moment where he froze like a deer in headlights. So, it probably succeeded in his estimation. And I think he's just going to rail on abortion, try to pretend like it was the Senate Republicans who torpedoed the deal. Therefore, his hands were tied and he couldn't do anything on immigration. But if he really wanted to do something on immigration, he could just reverse his reversal. First day in office, he reversed, was it 29 Trump era policies on immigration? Get rid of those. He got rid of everything. So just reinstate them. And then you could actually show that you're trying to do something on immigration.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the part to me that he actually ironically looked the strongest is when he got into that dialogue with the Republicans and he kind of clapped back a little bit in a weird way, again, out of place for the State of the Union. It made him look strong. That's the first time I've ever looked at Joe Biden and thought, wow, like he doesn't look like a weak old man. And so I think for Biden, he felt like that was a win. While maybe it wasn't the goal of the State of the Union, like Josh said, in its own way, it was a win for the Biden campaign. But at the same time, we also have to remember who's watching the State of the Union. This isn't like the olden days where the families gathered around to listen to the State of the Union together. Politicos are watching the State of the Union, and a handful of independents. But for the most part, it's people like us who want to pick it apart. And so, yes, he was able to make it through his speech, but at the end of the day, what was the answer to that? He was on drugs. So is it really a win?
Maybe. I mean, the thing is, again,
allegedly,
people don't watch it as much anymore in prime time, and they watch the clips later on, and they hear what the pundits say. This was a good thing or that good thing, and then, within a couple more days, it'll be all pretty much over, and the question will be, what are going to be the issues? And I still think. Republicans are correct in their estimation that immigration is a winning issue for them. Democrats are convinced that abortion is a winning issue for them. Republicans need to not be on the defense on that. They need to go on the offense. But I think those are the big issues for that we will see this year.
Yeah, and this is a good opportunity to talk about this because I saw something over the weekend. Basically, the big question is, what are the advantages of having open border policies? It doesn't really seem obvious as an American how that benefits anyone really, let alone the Democrats. And so I think it was a Michael Knowles clip. He was interviewing, it might've been Senator Haggerty, which I know he's written more on this. But essentially, the claim is you let them in the short term, hoping to maybe get an amnesty, a big amnesty package passed at some point, number one. And then number two, with the census bill, census doesn't count citizens, registered citizens. It just counts people. So if you are in the country, it will count you, which has a lot of implications in terms of redistricting, political power, things like that.
Absolutely.
But I think what I saw is the Senator Haggerty thing was really interesting. It popped out because I'm continually searching for the right answer to why anyone believes that this is good for politically, the country at all, power, anything like that. So was it Logan or Josh? Which one of you brought forth the Senator Haggerty thing?
Yeah. So the government was coming, close to a deadline and need to be funded again. And so Senator Haggerty's from Tennessee, and he forced a vote in the Senate on this, which would say the census should only count citizens of the United States, and therefore, as we draw the districts and decide how many states, which states, how many representatives each state gets, it should be based on actual citizens, the people who actually vote, and not just who happens to be occupied in that area. And every single Democrat voted no. And Lisa Murkowski, the most left-wing Republican from Alaska, she also voted no. All the other Republicans voted in favor of this proposal, of course. And actually, if you ask people, hey, by the way, do you know that right now, when they do the census, they do it every 10 years. Do you know that when they count it, they count not just the citizens, they count all the illegal immigrants as well. And then when they draw the district lines, they will give more congressional districts, more congressional seats to states like New York and California that have illegal immigrants. Did you know that? And people are like, wait, what? That can't be true. And they don't even believe you. Sometimes you make, no, this is true. We tried to stop it several times. I mean, Trump tried to change it. Now Senator Haggerty from Tennessee trying to change it. Democrats are like, no way. We don't want to give up seats in Congress. Why does this matter? Obviously, that's huge. I mean, you talk about no taxation without representation. These people are getting representation without even being a citizen. It's crazy. And it affects the Electoral College. So when you're talking about who's the next president, like if we had a close election in 2000 where Bush only won by like 4 electoral votes. Well, dude, Joe Biden probably has a surplus vote of like 18 votes because of this, because of the way the districts, different states get additional districts because of illegal immigration. So if you don't think this matters, wake up.
I think everyone thinks it matters. I just think people don't know that.
And the second thing, you're talking about the amnesty thing. I mean, that's what happened to Reagan. He did it in 1986. And like, okay, I'm going to sign this amnesty bill, but then, we got to start from scratch and not allow illegal immigration anymore. We have to have, make sure that businesses aren't employing, illegal workers. And here we are, almost 40 years later, still have a massive problem.
I feel like it's a mixture between not understanding and not caring, because I think that most people don't care about how many congressional seats are in their state because they don't understand why it matters and the power to the pen when it comes to drawing districts and when it comes to figuring out who is going to what congressman is representing what area. There's a lot of power in redistricting, and your average American sitting there during redistricting years and they're like, wait, I have a different congressman now, and like they never think about the process of what's going on.
Can you explain what redistricting is for the uninitiated?
So redistricting basically is after every census, every state's a little different depending on their state law with redistricting, but your state house, state senate, and congressional seats, your federal congressional seats, are redrawn for your state based off the population, how much is moved in or moved out of your state. And so, they have a lot of fun with these drawings because you can make a seat that was traditionally very red. You can make it very blue. You could make it 50-50. And there are a lot of laws when it comes to how many fair seats do you have to have per state. And so redistricting is a very stressful time for politicos, because I've worked on congressional seats during redistricting years. And during the redistricting year, we were running in 3 different seats during that year, waiting for them to vote on a map. And so one seat was an R+17, the other seat was a 50-50 blue and red, and the other one was a D+3. And so all of that in the span of like 6 months, waiting for them to pick what seat was going to be ours. And so it deeply affects the color of your district, whether it's going to be red or blue.
It's the difference between getting elected and not elected, right?
Yeah.
Right. And here's the thing, even if didn't mean to cut you off there if you're going to keep going, but I just think that redistricting is fascinating because Logan and I are politicals. We love this stuff. But when it comes to illegal immigration, people might get a little eyes glossed over with the redistricting. But the thing that most Americans do understand when it comes to illegal immigration is, first of all, if you allow hundreds of thousands of people to come into your country, they're going to be taking jobs or low skilled jobs, obviously. But that does increase the competition for Americans who are low skilled. So therefore, it becomes harder for you to get a good paying job because there's so many people. Here comes another car full of five, six more people willing to do the same work for even less than you are. And, they don't maybe pay taxes, whereas you do. So that's number one. Like it hurts the lower middle class and the working poor by having a flood of illegal immigration. That's why, by the way, Cesar Chavez, the immigrant activist in the 60s, was against illegal immigration. That's why Bernie Sanders was against illegal immigration, even into the 1990s, because he was pro-worker, right? Well, the script changed, and Democrats like, wait a minute, we see in them now future voters, because any kid they have in the United States, they'll probably vote for Democrats. The other thing about that, in addition to lowering, driving down the working poor further, the other problem it does is we've created this system where we have free education, K-12. We have hospitals can't refuse somebody who's enters into the emergency room. So we've created this safety net to help people. We have generally a capitalist free market economy, right? And we have this safety net just in case someone, falls through the cracks. But that doesn't mean that we can suddenly have, all of South America come into our country and take care of them. And it's not xenophobic or racist or greedy to say we have a generous policy to take care of people who fall through the cracks, but we're not going to just open it up for everyone in the entire world. Like, we're not an endless ATM. Like, we can't just keep printing this money. Our economy is eventually going to go bankrupt.
Yeah, and I think that we need to start calling what's happening with illegal immigrants coming in and being paid less and not paying taxes and having lower living environments that we're putting them in. Especially, you're seeing this on a lot of farms. We just passed legislation in Ohio to prevent illegal immigrants from coming in and working on distilleries and working on gas wells. Because we were finding out that they were bringing in people, paying them half of what they were paying everybody else, keeping them in a shack. And they ended up having all these explosions, which ultimately caused gas prices to go up because we weren't able to get access to the oil refineries.
Oh my gosh.
We're going to call it what it is. It's human trafficking.
Yeah. How could any
exploitation for sure?
And then this is somehow Christian, like for all these
Right.
Catholic charities to
Yes.
ship these people up to Ohio to work there. Like,
Welcoming the neighbor,
what
right?
could possibly
Yeah.
be Christian about that? People
Yeah.
dying in explosions.
Well, we gave them a blanket and we put them in a shack. I mean, we put a roof over their head. Like, this is better than Mexico, right? No,
Yeah.
I mean, it's absurd. And people were calling the Republicans racist for passing this legislation because it said that two things: A, you had to be a legal citizen to work on these refineries, and B, you had to be able to speak English. And so that was racist. But at the end of the day, it's because one side needs to be able to communicate effectively with the other side to prevent an explosion. But that's racist.
I had a weird experience too. Like, I was on an airplane and someone was sitting. Well, airplanes not getting great press these days. I mean, wheels are falling off Boeing stuff. But anyway, I'm on an airplane and there was someone sitting in the emergency row, and the attendant had to come up to them and ask, like, hey, do you understand the responsibility that you have? Basically, if something happens, you need to open the door, or like be willing. You're in an emergency door, you could potentially have to go out. And the person didn't speak English. And so it was a weird like standstill of him not being able to confirm that he understood his responsibilities, because the stewardess spoke English and this guy did not. And I think they ended up having to move him, which is good, because I was like thinking about that logically. I'm like, if something happens and we're not able to communicate with this guy who's in between us and getting off of a plane, that's a humongous problem. That's not a, but it's odd. Like, I think some people would look at that as like, oh, this is kind of a racist thing. Like, oh, you're not going to lie. Like, no, like we just, I don't want to die. I need to get off this plane.
Right.
So yeah, it's just, I feel like this just all gets back to like, you can't have good faith arguments with people that are going to call you racist for wanting people who legally are in this country to work, and to say there's something racist about being against that is kind of crazy. I saw a clip, Biden's strategy going forward. They were like some unsolicited advice. lean into the 3 R's. I think it was racist, rapist, and what was the last one? Dang it. It was another R, and they're like, this is just basically the new progressive dialogue summarized in 16 seconds.
You have us on the hook.
Well,
I'll think about
what it amounts to, though, is that there was, I grew up in Generation X, and like we had kind of gotten over the whole race stuff. And like at the end of the 90s, it was kind of nice. Like, people were just less obsessed with it. Not that all racism was gone or whatever. There's still some bad stuff that happened, but for the most part, we got over it. And David Marcus mentioned that. He's from the New York Post, and the left were going, how could you say that? There was still this horrible thing that happened. And it's like, yeah. I mean, it wasn't paradise, but it was a lot better than we were now. But Barack Obama made it a lot worse, actually. We would have thought the election of the first Black president would have kind of been the confirmation that we were entering into an era of goodwill amongst the races. But no, in fact, Barack Obama and his folk wanted to agitate further on this. And I just feel like my generation and the baby boomers, actually, as much as I'd like to make fun of them, they were pretty good at advancing race relations. And both these two generations, Gen X and baby boomers, made it a point of being conscious about this and trying to be better and trying to like watch what they say and like rid themselves of accidental racism or prejudices and that kind of stuff, and made an honest effort about it. And we had seen what happened when someone would say something horrible and then they would get scolded. And so we knew that using the name, accusing somebody of racism in today's society was like making yourself an immediate social pariah. The last thing you ever wanted to be called was racist.
Josh, can I pause you really quick? Logan, does that mean anything to you anymore?
What, a social pariah or being racist?
Just being called racist.
Well, this is what I was
right. I understand what you're getting at, but I just
you don't, because
it means nothing to me. At my age,
again,
what
I'm trying to say, Tom, is it means nothing to you now. But what I'm trying to tell the audience is they need to also, if they're my age, they need to get to the point where they don't allow it to have any power over them.
Right. So
you and Logan are of the younger generation where you're like, I've heard this so many times, it's lost its spell.
Truly laughable.
Yes, that's what you're trying to say to me. I'm like, I know that you're trying to say that, so shut up for a second. Listen to your elder.
No, I would like to get the perspective.
My point is, I want Gen Xers and boomers to realize as well, don't let the left use this as a cudgel against you. Don't let it have that power.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, Tom, I've worked in Republican politics for 8 years. So there are very few things I haven't been called.
Right.
So no, it's all lost its sting.
A woman in Republican politics. I'm sure that's even worse. You got all the intersectional problems of I mean, it just
Josh makes my life so difficult.
Logan doing everything wrong. Just can't be jogging in daylight calling people. You might get murdered by an illegal.
It's true.
Okay, so Josh, you had something. Actually, before we get into this, so Logan, you were part of this project. We came out with a new ad, and Big Red, I think you're on the sticks. If you could pull up this ad for us, tell us how this ad came to be, because I think it's very interesting. Logan.
Oh, sorry. I don't know. The audio wasn't working for a second. You were delayed. No. So this ad came to be because we wanted to take a moment and kind of flip the script a little bit. The Democrats are constantly using language like humanitarian crisis, and they're talking about how, the Republicans are so evil, they're monsters, because we just don't want open borders, because we just hate anybody that's not American. And that's been like the message for so long around immigration is Republicans are evil and Democrats are saving the day. And so conversations kind of started to stir about like, how can we address this issue and say, hey, this isn't the case at all? Because let's be honest, what's going on in the border, I know most of us have seen Sound of Freedom. And I think that was an excellent movie to draw attention to some of the crisis that's just going on, not just on the Mexico border, but all around. And so we kind of started playing with that idea, and this ad came to be over a multitude of conversations. And I mean, the ad it's a punch in the stomach, and that's what we wanted. We wanted it to be jarring. We wanted it to be uncomfortable, because that's how we should feel. So let's take a look.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna chop that out for the audio listeners. If you want to check out the ad, obviously come over to the YouTube channel. Subscribe while you're at it. The Loopcast on YouTube. Leave a like while you're around. But what is the intention with this ad? So this was made. You wanted to flip the script. I understand the rhetoric, but like practically, where are we putting this? Who are we trying to reach? What's the intended effect?
Yeah, so right now we're going to be playing this in swing states. We're going to be targeting swing voters in swing states to talk about the border, talk about immigration, and talk about the fact that it's not just hunky dory. People are just walking across the border and they're just living a better life all of a sudden. It's a dangerous trek. It's not, when you come across the border legally, at least there's some due process. We know who's coming in. We're able to make sure that people are accounted for, make sure that the women and the children are safe. When you have these individuals trekking across the border, they're being guided by strangers. They're being taken not just on dangerous terrains, but it's a dangerous trip, especially for women and children. And ultimately, it's an unsafe environment. And I think most people have no idea what the border's like. They just think they're walking from one desert land into Texas and it's all good. They put a cowboy hat and they move on, get a pint of beer, and it's all good to go. It's not like that. And so the idea behind this ad, like the rhetoric behind it, obviously I touched, but the idea behind it is the reality of what's going on. And so we're going to be targeting in states like Arizona, like Wisconsin, like Michigan, to talk about, hey, I know you're concerned about illegal immigration for a multitude of reasons, but let's not forget that it is a humanitarian crisis. Women and children are on the line, and the Democrats do not care.
Can't say it much better than that. Josh was about to say something, but it's like,
Josh can.
I don't know, Josh.
Well, no. I mean, as you mentioned with what's going on in Ohio, I mean, they're exploited on both sides of the border, and the idea that the compassionate thing to do is just to leave the door open to the border and let everyone pour in. You're forgetting that what you're doing is you're incentivizing the exploitation of migrants who are being smuggled through Mexico up into the United States by these coyotes, they're called, and they're vicious men who assault and rape women and children. So, and many of these people die on this trek.
Right.
There was the story of the Arizona rancher. I mean, it breaks your heart. He's got a ranch right on the border, and he's, 17 different people have recently died trying to cross in the country illegally. He refers to rape trees. It breaks your heart, and it's just not. It's absolutely not the way it should be done, and it's absolutely shameful. This idea that most Americans are you in favor of legal immigration? And like 70% of Americans yeah, but like 80% of Americans are against illegal immigration, and yet we still have it, even if it and instead of saying, oh, you're just racist, like you are, if you support an open border, you are defending this wretched policy that is causing exploitation of the people you think you're supporting. It's indefensible, and it's time these people put up or shut up.
So Logan, Josh did do his best to say it better than you did. I don't know.
He tried. Yeah. We'll compare them later at the recording.
Yeah.
We'll play them side by side. We'll let the listeners decide.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I do think, I think that it's one of those things where Republicans for too long have just kind of let the left say whatever they want. And, Republicans are like, oh, well, voters know better than this. They do. Voters are smart, right? They can figure out when someone's pandering and when they're not. But at the same time, they kind of do need to be educated on what's happening on the border. If you're not looking for the news, you're not hearing the news. And so when you talk about how dangerous the border is, especially for women and children, it does take some level of education. And that's what we're trying to do here at Catholic Vote, is educate especially Catholics on the issue on the border and why a closed border makes sense under Catholic Church teaching.
Yeah, and we also have an upcoming book where we've got all these different people who have written articles, all lots of different issues. But we have our coworker, former Congressman Tim Hulskamp, wrote a chapter on immigration. It's going to be in this 2024 book that we have. We're talking about all the issues that Catholics should really care about. And in that book, former Congressman mentions that it's actually kind of an interesting story. The assumption here is that America should just kind of do what these bishops were telling the lawmakers of Kansas. We're a wealthy country, and you guys should take care of these people who are coming to your door, right? And that's sort of like the guilty assumption here. But he was not a congressman at the time. He was a state lawmaker. But Camp said, well, what about, these countries that these people are coming from, Central and South America are predominantly Catholic countries. The United States isn't Catholic. These are Catholic countries they're coming from. In fact, they have 400 years of Catholicism in their country. What about the bishops and the people in those countries? Don't they also have a responsibility for the people in their own countries? And the bishops that heard that just were kind of sputtering. They didn't know really what to say. And I think we just carry on these assumptions that because the United States of America, with this large, we're a large country, we're a continent-sized power. We have 330 million Americans, and our federal government is enormous. It spends so much money. So that the thought is, what, you really can't afford to take in these people? But again, it's not an endless source of money. Like, we're already cruising for bankruptcy when you start looking at, as more and more baby boomers retire, Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, they're all way over budget and they're running out of money. Like we can't just be the ATM to the world here. And honestly, an open border, as this ad says so well, it allows for the exploitation of the very people that we're supposedly welcome. So let's have a legal open border. Let's have a order at the border.
Point of personal privilege, subject for another time, how the Catholic Church is somewhat funneling this crisis, but we can get into that a little bit later.
At least not making it better.
Definitely not making it better. We do need to move on, although the immigration talk has been rich. Josh, you brought this one up. If we could get the pro-Palestine protester destroying art, Big Red, I would love that one pulled up. So there's a recent trend of people that are frustrated with what's going on in the Israel-Palestine region. So they are destroying works of art. The latest is of Lord Balfour, I believe is in St. Trinity College. This is in the UK, I'm pretty sure. And they are just spray painting, slashing with knives, because I guess Lord Balfour, he's somehow involved with that region.
Would it matter? Maybe it wouldn't even matter.
I don't know. He's something about Israel, something this or that, whatever. To my understanding, people doing this are just getting slaps on the wrists. It seems to me that these punishments aren't harsh enough. Like, they're destroying things that can't be ever made again. For what? I don't understand for what, really. It reminds me of standing in front of cars that are going to run you over. It just seems a little bit pointless. Josh, why does this bother you specifically so much?
Well, again, for the reason you say, like, why are they doing this? This person considers what they've done to be a success. Okay. Because who really, at the end of the day, is going to cry so many tears, supposedly, over Lord Belford's picture being, painting being destroyed. And she or he, or whoever it is able to get out the news that Israel is being evil to Gaza. Right. And so this is being broadcast around the world. But the fact is, if I'm a security guy at this art museum, I'm tackling this person. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm not going to allow somebody to destroy this. I don't know how we allow this to happen. And here's the thing. She's probably going to, like you say, get a slap in the wrist. She'll spend a day in jail and she'll use it like a badge of honor. Look how successful I was. This is why I am not even kidding when I say we need to bring back caning or frogging. Just get out the cane and this person get whap 20 times with a cane. Then they're gonna be like, wait a minute now.
It's a recurring theme on the Lubcast is Josh calling for caning to come back.
Yeah. I mean, let's see that on social media, I mean, come on. Like, and people who disrupt traffic so people can't get to where they go. Like, there's the time where the one guy's like, if I don't get back to court, I'm going to be, I'm going to be
I'll go to jail. Yeah. I'm going to file
and they're like, they didn't care. They didn't care. And so it's like
the Cleveland airport this Saturday, there was a pro-Gaza protest at the entrance of the airport. They wouldn't let anybody get to their planes. It's like,
try that in a small town.
Like, what? Like, I want to know, how does preventing people to get on the flights that they paid for and they need to get on for whether personal or work. You don't know their life story. It could be an emergency and you won't let them on. How does this help your cause at all?
So I saw I think the counterpoint to our
It
obvious
does help the
sentiments
cause,
here.
unfortunately.
So here's the thing, and this is when I asked this because this was the top comment. Was, does it not give you pause that protesters are motivated by tens of thousands of deaths, even if you disagree with their perspective on why these people have died?
Yeah,
I mean,
it just makes me
my
want to be
first question is like, it's completely besides the point. I don't understand why.
It does affect me. I tell you what, Tom. I didn't really care that much about the Israeli-Gaza thing, but now I'm like, hey, let's give Israel more money because you guys did this. I mean, I'm going to go the other way. I feel like these are petulant little children. It's
Right.
like, oh, you're going to whine and cry to get the, so you get ice cream. Here's broccoli, kiddo. That's
Yeah,
not
right.
what-
It just
that's how
makes you want to
dad
do
rolls.
the opposite. I don't understand how this is
Right.
garnering public support.
Them like protesting Starbucks. I never wanted Starbucks more in my life. Like, I'm like, why are you like, I was protesting Starbucks, but now that you're protesting Starbucks, I'm going to drink Starbucks.
There's
just
like
'cause you're protesting
advertising.
it.
There's like advertising psychology behind that. But the one thing that kind of made me laugh, I think this was last week. There was pro-Palestine. These pro-Palestine protesters are kind of everywhere, and they're actually reading from the AOC playbook. So AOC was coming out of the movie theater. I think she saw Dune 2, most likely, unless she was watching some indie film. These protesters were in her face, like saying, hey, call for genocide, say genocide, whatever. And she was getting so mad. Of course, her, like, I don't know if it's like her boyfriend or fiance was like behind her the whole time, not really doing anything. I was like, classic. But they were in her face.
How dare you use my rules against me?
Exactly. And so she's actually famous for saying that the point of protesting is to make people uncomfortable. And so she's literally just getting a taste of exactly what she said. And now she's mad about it. But I think to the point, it's like, is it effective? Like, how does this improve the climate to stop people from getting to work? Couldn't that energy be used in a more constructive way instead of being a nuisance to people?
They understand though. What is the story of modern liberal governments in the West right now, including the United States? If you scream loud enough and complain loud enough, you'll get what you want. The squeaky wheel will get the oil, and they'll succeed because we don't have governments that will stand up against this kind of stuff and treat these little snots in the way they deserve to be treated.
Well, I guess the problem is if they do, then they're considered authoritarian or a crackdown regime, and then you get the press machine.
Oh, really?
And they get all their.
Oh, what a bummer! Call me that.
Doesn't bother you, but
yeah.
I mean, but this is a trend. We're seeing this over and over the past couple of years where people act out in an act of protest. They spray paint, they burn things down, they bust down statues, and nothing ever happens to any of them,
For
but
now,
God forbid you behead a head of Satan.
Logan, unless you're in the Capitol on January 6th, then you'll get jailed without any representation for years and years. Yeah, right.
In
Or you
Iowa.
knock down a Satan statue. So it's not and you know what? If that protester would have cut up a LGBTQ flag in public, they'd be charged with a hate crime.
Done.
No question.
It'd be over.
It's already happened. They already have been charged with hate crime. So it's not that these regimes are like incapable of enforcing. They just choose on what to enforce. And clearly, the regime is protecting their own. They're protecting the LGBTQ stuff. They're protecting Satanists in Iowa or whatever. They're definitely not protecting people in middle America just a little bit fed up with the government and goof around in some protests in the Capitol. I mean, the more footage that come out from that are just like, it's so ridiculous on its face. Someone said like they came in with crosses and they were burning things down. Like, are we watching the same tape? Like, it's just kind of
okay, but so I feel like, what you're describing though with these, like the protesters that cut up the Lord Balfour painting, and then the ones that stopped the people from getting to the airport in Cleveland. It kind of reminds me of like the United States in 1941, with countries like Japan were like poking the bear. And it's like, this boy, don't you shouldn't do that. And even some of the Japanese leaders, like, that's kind of a sleeping giant. If you wake him up, he might get real mad. I kind of feel like that's what's going to happen. Like, if things don't get back to essential normalcy, and we don't actually have law enforcement being truly objective and not one-sided on this kind of stuff, then we're going to eventually get a leader that makes Donald Trump look like a cupcake. And it's not going to be pretty.
Well, we've actually seen it already in different parts of the country. I think Portugal actually just elected a really considered like extreme far right candidate, populist candidate. I think we saw it in Denmark as well. And then El Salvador is another great example of just like, hey, we don't want gangs running our country. Like, I'm going to throw them all in jail.
Yeah. And then even this past weekend, Portugal had an election, and they were considered a country that would be, the populists won't make it, they'll never make it here. And they made massive gains, and now they're going to be part of the new government, it looks like. So this stuff is it's interesting. It
can only go on so long. Yeah, I don't know. You can only kick a dog so many times. Okay, we go into the Twilight Zone. Looks like Josh, you're up first. Although, should we go ladies first? Logan, you are new to the program. Are you ready for your spotlight?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. Logan, what's your Twilight Zone?
So my Twilight Zone was, I'm sure most of you guys have seen what happened in the Hazelwood School District over this past weekend.
Oh my gosh, I can't even.
The young girl, I like watching it, makes me so uncomfortable. This young girl was attacked by a mob of other students, obviously left with a severe brain injury as you watch.
Yeah, you might. I was going to say we might. I don't even know if we
can
show this a ton of times. I would just pause this right now.
Yeah,
I think that's good.
So nobody did anything to help this girl. I'm not sure right now she's in critical condition. Most people saying that they think she's going to pass away. Nobody did anything to help. They filmed. This school district has a history of lawsuits for discrimination against white students and white employees. Not to mention that they only have a 5% like math comprehension rate for the school. And the question is, nothing's happening. Nobody's talking about it. You're not seeing it in major news sources. Why? Because it was a white student. Let's call it what it is. If the roles were reversed, nobody wants to talk about this. But if the roles were reversed, this would be all over every major news source. It would be the end of the world. There'd be protests in the streets, but nobody is talking about it.
And they'd be saying, say her name.
Right. Yep. Yeah. 100%. 100%. So watching this just broke my heart. And I think it just kind of plays into a lot of the conversations that we had on this Loopcast. And I think just several in the past with you guys is just, there is a double standard. Nobody's talking about it because they're uncomfortable to talk about it. And it's time that we stand up and we do something about it. It's so sad.
I mean, it is such a combination of a lot of things that we're talking about, because I've even seen some people, and I think this is probably correct, and Josh, you could speak to this more, like what fighting used to be. Like there used to be a fight, but you would never fight to kill someone.
To kill.
Right. Like you would never bang someone's head on the concrete, understanding that that's probably going to kill them. And so the fights that we're seeing now are different than the fights of maybe like Josh, your childhood or a little bit before. And I think that like what would possess someone to bang someone's head on the concrete like that, knowing that it's probably going to kill them, is like years and years of racial hatred, fomenting hatred, no accountability as well. Like there's really no punishments again for this kind of action. Obviously 5% reading rate, what's going on in the school. I don't know if it's social media. I don't know what it is. But
here's the thing:
new type of fighting. Like I've never seen something like that.
A serious misunderstanding of what it means to be human, by the way, because we all look at babies when they're born, and we got the picture of Erika holding her baby. Beautiful, right? And we're like, oh, babies are so cute and fluffy and sweet, and they laugh and they, but we also have to remember, because of original sin, our society is always invaded by a new generation of barbarians, and that they actually do need to be civilized. All of us, men, boys, girls, all of us have to be civilized. And if we're not, things like this happen. I mean, if you don't actually the idea is education is not just learning science and math and all that kind of stuff. Yes, that's part of it, but it's not just that. Education is actually primarily moral formation, and we've completely forgotten about that in most of the public school K-12 stuff. We don't even do the Pledge of Allegiance anymore. It's just, here's the stuff you need to learn before you can take your next test. There's no concept of that all of us have dignity. The best we can get is an anti-bullying campaign, right? And so what has that done for us? Look what happened in the video you just showed us. Like, hello, like, really?
Well, it's not like, and it hasn't happened by accident. There's been a really aggressive push to remove all attempts at morality out of public education. and like to create
Exactly.
this kind of like strange vacuum of no morals, but we're just going to teach people things that they need to know, like to be a good citizen. So like math, science, whatever. And we're not even doing that. So like,
I mean, you look at
what are we doing now?
You look at the Old Testament,
It's
right?
babysitting. It seems like it would be my
The
point.
Old
It's
Testament is a
like
story of the Jews being told, this is how you should live your life, and this is how you should behave, and this is how you should act. And then them doing that and doing well, prospering and being good. And then straying from that, and everything goes haywire.
Yeah.
And God's like, how many times I got to tell you this? And again, why and you think to yourself, you read these stories from the Old Testament, like, how were they so stupid to ignore the lessons? Like, God told them what to do, like the 10 commandments, like treat each other with respect. How could they? And then they'd have prophets saying, what are you doing? Don't do this. You're crazy. Well, look at our own country. We have prophets who are saying, stop doing this. Stop doing these horrible things that people are going to end up at each other's throats. They're going to bash their heads in. We can't do that. Oh, come on. You're just we don't need that. You're trying to legislate morality, which is the biggest canard I've ever heard. That's all anyone ever does in legislation.
The government wants to say that they know better than parents, but then also at the same time, they're removing all morality from the schools. And let's be honest, kids that are in public schools are spending more time with their teachers and their peers than they are with their parents. And so, take from that what you will. Where you put your kid in school matters.
I mean, you'll know them by their fruits. I mean, it doesn't seem like the fruits have been very ripe. Let's put it that way. Josh, your Twilight Zone.
Well, I'm going to do a little bit of a palate cleanser.
Yes.
We had a lot of hard stuff on this episode, but now there's a lot of people your guys' generation who complain about the cost of housing. And a lot of people who are my age, the quote old fogies, like, oh, shut up, just suck it up. And you're fine. I used to be poor. And here's where I want to tell people my age, Gen X and baby boomers, to kind of shut up a little bit for a second here.
This has been the shut up episode from Josh.
Yeah, no. So, I mean, like, housing is actually too expensive, and too many kids have been suckered into taking, mortgage style loans for student to go to college. And so they are in kind of a pinch. Couple that with the fact that there's lots of regulations that make it very expensive to build homes and make it hard to build smaller homes. People who are just trying to get into their family formation years are in kind of a bind. So they actually talked about this at the National Governors Association, and North Dakota Governor Doug Bugram, who ran for president for like 15 minutes, and I didn't like him because he was kind of downplaying the social issues, but I like him for this. I'm going to give him a shout out here.
Zoning came during the Industrial Revolution when there was a lot of like air pollution, other things. Say, hey, we're going to have the factories here and the people here, and we got to keep them separate. And then we went even further and said, well, here's the kind of homes that can be, and retail's there. And we just, it was a one-dimensional map, and you draw it out and say, all these four things have got to be separate. And guess who that was great for? That was great for people that built roads, and it was great for the car companies. And then we built a city that's designed, we built cities all over America that are designed for automobiles and not designed for people. And then if you take a look at your cost, anybody that's been a mayor like Spencer's been, the cost of running a city is the linear feet of everything. It's the linear feet of sewer and water and sidewalk and roads. And then when you get more of that, you need to have more fire stations, low income. If you have a neighborhood that's all houses, if you want to have a coffee shop that looks like a house, you should be able to have a coffee shop. Because then people say, I leave my starter home, I want to move to a new home, it's got to have 3-car garage. Why does it have 3-car garage? Because the mom, the dad, and the kids all got a car to be able to drive to school, drive to church, drive to a restaurant, drive to a grocery store. Of course you need all that because you can't walk to anything. And then people will, they'll go on vacation and they'll say, wow, that was the most amazing vacation I ever had. Why? Well, because we went to some place where we could walk and everything was right there. Well, you can actually have that in our own states. You just have to design it. We haven't there's places in Northern Europe that have snow where people bike all winter long. You can't find a place like that in the US because we don't put the investment into building the infrastructure for multimodal transportation. So I think one of the things that we have to look at as a country, our housing costs are high in part because of the way that we've designed our cities. And I think there's this check out form-based code. There's some really interesting things that are there. And you guys talked about beginning the granny flats and other stuff, but part of it is we've got to get the coffee shop, the barber shop, and law firms back into residential neighborhoods in ways that can help lower the cost and create services where you don't need a car for everything.
Very powerful.
We
Wait a
invented
second.
zoning.
He's kind of spitting. I mean, didn't Catholics kind of get that right? Church in the middle of in the town. You got the bell telling you what time it is. You can walk everywhere you need to walk. Yeah, Josh is big on that one. The Josh Shut Up episode and Josh caning episode. This has been landmark for both of those takes. So, Josh, anything further on everyone's favorite hockey coach? I think you'd be a great hockey coach. You just give me that vibe. But anything further, or should I run into my twilight zone?
Well, I mean, I do feel like he's right. When people go on vacation and everything's all enclosed in one spot, they love it. And
Especially
the same thing, like, and then that's why a lot of people like going to Europe. They go to Paris or Rome. Oh, it's so lovely. Everything's all together. And look, I live in I like having, I got 30 acres or whatever. I like having space or whatever. And there's a lot of Americans that like space. But I live in a small town and we have a downtown. You can actually walk it and enjoy it. And people love that. It can happen in other places too. I think more cities need to think about that and rethink what they're doing for zoning. And we're going to talk about that in our upcoming interview with Tim Carney. So be looking out for that. Should drop, I think, next week. So it'll be good.
And they were roommates. Okay.
That's true.
So mine. Can you show the headline, please, Big Red? So it'll be a fun one to end on. So we love that Josh loves talking about telling people to shut up, that we should be caning protesters, and Nikki Haley. I'd say it's probably the big three of Josh's favorite things.
No. David French, who wrote this, he deserves.
Josh, you didn't. That was the honorary mention for it, David French. So David French wrote this article, why Haley voters should support Biden. And it's no secret. I think a lot of Biden supporters actually went over to vote for Nikki Haley in the primary. Nikki Haley was very proud of winning DC. If you're not a regular listener to this program, we're not big Nikki Haley fans around here, partially because we think she's pretty corrupt. She's big on the war machine. She started an independent military contractor company, made quite a bit of money after her time in the UN. Very weak on a lot of the gender stuff. Not a huge fan. Very, very much a rhino, if that.
She wants to return the Republican Party to 2004.
Correct. And so I was reading this article because David French also, Josh noted, not fan of him. He was formerly, what was he like known for? He was kind of the evangelical, like conservative guy, and then Trump.
Yeah. And so he wrote all these articles, he was spearheading the evangelical Never Trump movement. And so that's why the New York Times hired him as a columnist, because they love it when they love to hire people that will attack, Donald Trump.
Right. But before he was kind of like at least respected, I think, in conservative.
Well, he worked on religious liberty cases 15, 20 years ago. That's for sure. Yeah.
Right. And so some people feel kind of betrayed by him because he's really switched up when it's come to Trump.
Right. And it's like, it's not like he says, look, I think there's a lot of reasons why he can't back Trump, and here are my reasons why. And at least he could understand why a lot of Americans are like, I see your point, but Biden supports gender mutilation. He champions abortion. So I can't support him. So I'm going to vote for Trump to stop Biden. He doesn't understand that. He thinks that's immoral and like, oh my gosh, this is the worst thing in the world to vote for Trump. And it's like, it's not like Joe Biden is a saint. It's not like Joe Biden is pro-life. He's the exact opposite. So any qualities that you would assign and say that Donald Trump have that fall short, you're like, well, Biden's got that in spades. It's not like Donald Trump has awesome policies but bad moral character, and then Biden has got great policies or bad policies but good moral character. Biden has got bad moral character as well. This is a guy who lies all the time. Like he lied about his.
All right, Josh, you gotta let me get into it though. I know this is my twilight zone.
It gets me revved up though.
Point of personal privilege. All right, can we reshare here? Let's go to the first paragraph. I have 2 points that I want to point out. First paragraph. Last Wednesday, a day before he delivered a rousing State of the Union address, Joe Biden issued an invitation to the roughly 30% of the Republican primary voters who had voted for Nikki Haley in the GOP presidential primaries before she dropped out. The message was simple. Donald Trump doesn't want you, but we do. After all, Trump said on True Social that anyone who made a contribution to Haley would be, quote, permanently barred from the MAGA camp. Biden, by contrast, acknowledges differences of opinion with Haley voters, but argued that the agreement on democracy, decency, and the rule of law and support for NATO should unite Haley voters against Trump. Now, I was kind of laughing reading the whole thing, but my favorite part was when he was talking about abortion. So if we could go down to, it's a pretty short article. So it's talked about the part that he really struggled with. He had a really hard time on this part. Let me find. He talks rule of law, awesome. Saying that Biden didn't defund the police, awesome. Okay, the most fraught issue for many conservatives. The most fraught issue for many conservatives considering crossing the aisle is abortion. That's certainly the most difficult issue for me. But while Trump nominated the justices who helped reverse Roe v. Wade, he also failed on the most important metric of all, the number of abortions performed in America. Although Barack Obama was very much a pro-choice president, the abortion rate decreased by a remarkable 28% during his 2 terms, with 338,270 fewer abortions performed in 2016 than in 2008. By contrast, there was 56,080 more abortions by the end of Trump's presidency in 2020 than there had been in 2016, and the abortion rate rose for 3 consecutive years in 2018, 2019, and 2020. So he's making the point to him that Obama essentially was better on abortion. Therefore, Obama was better on abortion, even though he was outspokenly pro-choice, and even though Trump basically overturned Roe v. Wade, he's actually better on abortion. Now, yeah, I wanted to go into the stats. I wanted to go see, like, okay, what's David French looking at here? The decrease by 28% article, he pulled it from the Guttemacher Institute, which Josh likes to probably call them the communist outfit. So I went into the study.
Planned Parenthood's research arm.
Josh, they do research for Planned Parenthood. If you go to the introduction of this study, I'm just going to read you the first sentence of the introduction. Abortion helps women, transgender men, and gender non-binary individuals with the capacity to become pregnant, to control their fertility, thereby maintaining autonomy over their bodies and the trajectory of their lives. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that they were a little bit biased in these results. And these are the type of studies that David French, a Christian, is citing to be in defense of Obama somehow being better on abortion than the man who basically overturned Roe v. Wade.
And it's not like actually, with regards to Guttemacher, I actually don't have as much of a qualm with them. But the point is, what was the reason for the decline in the Obama years? Is because in the year 2010, Republicans swept across the country and won legislative districts all across the states and passed tons of new pro-life laws, and it restricted abortion. And so there was fewer babies that were able to be killed. Like, praise God. Barack Obama had nothing to do with that, and in fact opposed that at every turn. So Josh, he doesn't get credit for that.
Josh, that would require way too much digging and research and understanding of that. That doesn't fit.
Just letting our audience know we're dealing with total liars, and David French is a total liar.
Total liar, dude. Oh my gosh, I just could not believe that he made that with a straight face. It's like he went and found one study. He was like, "Oh, Obama's better than Trump."
This will ease my conscience. Yeah, exactly.
Logan, what was the Thunderdome experience like on today's Loopcast?
Incredible from start to finish. Life-changing.
Stop flattering us.
I'm gonna walk out of here a changed woman. So
come on.
I can't wait till next week.
That was the hope. We hope that you enjoyed it enough to come back. So Logan will be joining the program regularly along with some other Catholic Vote personalities. It's going to be a lot of fun. Continue to pray for Erika. She's doing her most important job, being a mother, spending some time with that beautiful new baby. So if you want to celebrate Erika's new birth and support the program, you can leave us a review. Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You can head over to YouTube, like it. If you want to watch what's going on in the episode, join us on the lives. That'll be 11 a.m. Eastern time every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We will be here. You'll be able to hang out with us. We appreciate you all so much. Big shoes to fill. Okay. Thanks, Mitch. Yeah, I think
just wait till I get comfortable.
All right. I like that energy. Fighting words. Erika,
all right.
The next generation is here. But other than that, until then, God bless everyone. We always end St. Thomas More, St. Fidelis, Our Lady of Guadalupe. Pray for us, and we will see you guys on Wednesday. Peace.